poisoning or whatever, and they were told to walk home and walk back to the school a few times with these things running. So you've got using Google Maps, Google Earth, they could then mash up all their data and they could get a kind of depiction of the pollution around their school. Because all of the different kids, all the different data. Which was fabulous, really educationally valuable, but it also told every paedophile in the area kind of where kids walked to and from their homes. So all of a sudden this was taken down again. But there are lots of examples of that kind of thing. The complexity, the abstractness, the number of factors, and the appropriation means that it's not ethically straightforward. What I'm not going to say, because I haven't got time, is I think the extent to which these devices, in their capacity to generate images, ideas, information, but also identities, transform the nature of knowing and learning. I mean, Richard Noss from the University of London talks about epistemological revolutions, and he's actually just talking about computers, the capacity of computers to change what we know, how we know it, how we prove we know it. And computers, by comparison, are relatively dumb, so they're not really very interested in where they are or who's using them. Mobile phones, mobile technologies are far more personal and far more kind of acquisitive in the data they can acquire. I'm going to say it again, they know where they are, they know what they're looking at, they can record what they're saying, they can connect you to communities, and those communities can all have their various different ideas about what's worth knowing. And that is, in a sense, is challenging to the formal structures of education. But finally, I mean, clearly what they also do is challenge the nature of economies in the sense of we all now make, own, value, buy, sell, a whole different range of resources, artifacts, assets that maybe 10 years ago we certainly didn't. These are holsters for tasers, which I'm sure no one in Sweden would dream of owning or using, but they're on sale in the US. Tasers? They're kind of electric pistols for disabling burglars, or anyone else. And these are holsters, so you can have a leopard skin one or the pink one or whatever, and they're MP3 enabled, so you can actually listen to music whilst you're disabling the burglar. But the advertising says they put the cute into electrocute. So yeah, as I've run out of time, I'll stop there. Leaving lots left unsaid, but I hope you can think through possibly what the issues, the resonance between, if you like, society, development, education and technology actually are, and what the consequences maybe are for what's happening in parts of, the sophisticated technological economies, and what might be the consequences for others.
Okay, thank you. Some questions about that note? Any questions? Anybody wants to comment on this at this point in time? Too many questions to ask. You don't know where to start. Yes.
Oh, sorry.
Just kind of to just pick up on the idea that people will bring their own kit, basically. What are creative ideas in terms of solving that, in terms of sort of the equity concerns that are, become obvious at that point?
I'll answer that in relation to UK higher education because we're still discussing it. But and again, I don't know if this resonates with Swedish higher education, and the connections with parts of the developing world would be would be similar, but very different, similar. UK higher education has a problem just resourcing the current level of IT, meaning desktop computers. The expectations about ratios and up-to-datedness from the government funding agency mean that universities are completely stretched. IT managers talk about driving off a cliff. It's not sustainable. If you then add to that the kind of customer relationship that replaces the student relationship, you then get issues about kind of expectations, customer satisfaction, student satisfaction surveys. And their expectations, I guess, are not only about how new the stuff is, but actually how monolithic it is. You know, it's all PCs, whereas their experience and what they own is very different from that. They have all sorts of devices which express their individuality rather than their institutional homogeneity. So there's kind of force behind the argument that, yes, so that the consequence of that is we look at using the learner's devices, and in doing so, we change the default to they provide the stuff and free up the money, which then addresses the equity problem. You know, so if 90% of the students have got adequate hardware and software, that then frees up the money we were spending to fund equity. But actually how we do that and how it stops being like school dinners, you know, where you're the kind of welfare kids, is really quite complicated. And I mean, you do get a lot of practical difficulties like on network security. I mean, most universities have wireless network capable of maybe supporting 10% of the student population because they're just doing it as optional. If it then becomes core and compulsory, they need to build much bigger, stronger networks. I'm not even sure it's technically quite demanding. It's not a kind of dumb deed because you need to be putting wireless access points all over the place. They then start interfering with each other. But I'm not quite sure if those issues are ones kind of dreamed up because actually the one that people don't like addressing is actually that it changes the power relationships within the institution, within the professions. You know, as I say, all of a sudden the teacher is no longer in control. But I think the equity one shouldn't be insoluble, but people's hearts have got to be in it. At the moment, they're still trying to kind of spend their way out of the existing problem by just making do with older and older equipment. But as I say, I don't know how that resonates with Swedish universities.
Okay, thank you very much.